Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychedelic Association of Canada webinar. We're doing Beyond the Game. We got former NHL players having real conversations on mental health and healing. We're going to talk a little bit about some psychedelics and just healing through hockey. It's a beautiful game. I've got two wonderful guests. I've got Ryan Vandenbush here. He was drafted by Toronto, played 310 NHL games, Chicago, New York, Pittsburgh, won a Memorial Cup. And pound for pound was one of the toughest players I ever played against. He's got a psilocybin license and does a lot of work with cannabis. I also have Riley Cote, former NHL forward, who played with the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the team's 2010 run to the Stanley Cup Finals, Calder Cup champion with the Philadelphia Phantoms, podcast host of Nasty Knuckles, which is one of the most popular podcasts out there. I love it. He had 156 NHL games and has one more NHL goal than I did. And he's a good man. He's helping reshape the conversation around healing and psychedelics. Does a lot of youth work, drumming circles, yoga, lots of wonderful things. Just a beautiful human being. And we have Dr. Pam Kriskow, who's a Canadian physician, clinical instructor, also as well at the University of British Columbia, former firefighter, medical lead for Roots to Thrive. Father was a former pro hockey player that played 231 games in the National Hockey League. Her and her partner Paul Stamets are world leaders recognized in the field of integrative and psychedelic medicine, trying to change the way things are viewed. So, welcome everybody. It's good to have everybody here. And Ryan, we'll just start with you. Just give us a little bit about your background story of what led you to psychedelic medicine and what you're doing today.
Well, healing through hockey, as you mentioned earlier, Hirsch, the game of hockey is a pretty rough sport, and I left the game in 2007 with 12 hockey-related surgeries, many broken bones, many concussions, knocked unconscious, and you leave the game, and you leave. You don't just leave the game; you leave your brothers, and so not only physically but emotionally, you're a little torn. You got to reinvent yourself as to whatever it is you're into at that time. And for me, I got into real estate, and then I was pretty dependent on those opioids that the teams used to give out. First time, my first Percocet when I was with the Rangers in 1998. And it really does shut off your pain receptors and let you know that you're not in pain. And then when you leave the game, it's kind of hard to get rid of that. And cannabis, I was introduced to medical cannabis in the summer of 2009, and it just blew me away when I started using cannabis. I was always afraid to anyway during the playing days because it stayed in your system for 30 days. So it led you to other harsher drugs, like cocaine that was out of your system in 48 hours. And cannabis, it made me more conscious as to what I'm putting into my body, and the long-term effects. And I did some more research on it, and it just absolutely blew me out of the water. And my wife was also diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018, and she used that through her treatments, and it made a big difference. So I'll be forever a believer of the plant, and I'm getting my cannabis license, and that brought me to psilocybin as well, and that was a game changer. People ask me what does psilocybin do for you, Brian? And for me, it's just if I microdose it's the difference between watching high definition TV or not. And I think it's another game changer in the health industry, and I just wish one day we could make it more accessible. And that's, I guess, the purpose of our whole discussion here is to talk about that and see where it takes us.
Riley, I'll ask you the same question. I took a little shot at you with the one goal, but what I didn't say is you probably had 100 more fights than I did in the National Hockey League. That was your role. You were an enforcer, and that's a tough gig to have. So just a little bit about your backstory as well, and how you got into psychedelics and healing.
Much like Bushy, I mean, the game of hockey obviously gave me so much. I was able to live out my childhood dream, but it also, I signed up for it. I subscribed to be a fighter, but the game took its toll. The physical wear and tear. I would say I would say the physical element brought me to both cannabis and psilocybin, healing the physical body and the brain. I retired in 2010, 28 years old. I left a year on my contract with the Flyers because I was quickly crumbling, and I knew that there was something better on the other side. So I had to make, say, the hardest, easiest decision of my life was to turn the page, bow out of the game, and heal. Didn't understand the level of healing I was engaging in. It was really physical, focused at the start. My last two surgeries, a finger surgery and a nose surgery, I just used cannabis. I was dealing with substance abuse issues, booze and pills, much like Bushy, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could use just cannabis post surgery and not use the pills. And that was kind of like the beginning of, well, my first year of quitting alcohol. I quit drinking for a year, but at the same time managing physical pain and the post surgery pain, inflammation with cannabis was at the pretty much the same time that I started exploring psilocybin mushrooms from a different perspective. Like I had been introduced to psilocybin and cannabis obviously early in my life. Very much understood relationship. It was often used, in combination with alcohol, the party, that escalating. So no real true understanding of the depth of psilocybin specifically, and cannabis. But when I had this aha moment, I read a book called Hemp for Health that kind of unlocked this idea and understanding around cannabis and some of the minor cannabinoids and the real true nature of the healing properties of the plant. And at really much the same time, I read another book around psilocybin and its neuroprotective or neuroplasticity, neurogenesis properties. So I kind of had a similar aha moment, but mainly around the physical. I was like, oh yeah, we can heal the body, heal the brain, right? And as you can imagine, it just as you heal the physical, it goes deeper and deeper, and then it gets you to the yoga mat. And I'm again approaching yoga, asana practice from more of a physical perspective, just like let's limber up, let's lengthen the spine, let's like undo all this, this physical damage. And as you know, it's just consciousness unfolds, and it leads you to the meditation cushion, and it just led me down this path of mindfulness. So it's been an amazing journey, and I feel like I'm just getting started. And I'm so grateful for all the trials and tribulations of hockey, and the darkness that the games kind of brought up for me. But also, I signed up for it, and I owned it, right, and I owned my ownership, and where I got myself and that hole I got myself into. But just so grateful that obviously Mother Nature supporting us, Mother Earth supported us so beautifully with some of these medicines that have changed my life, and give me a completely different perspective, and just being of service now, right, and just sharing the medicine, but sharing the integration that comes along with it. Because I'm not going to sit here and say, well, the psychedelics are gonna change your life forever if you have no ownership in the healing. You have to have the ownership, meaning that you have to show up and embody what is teaching you and reminding you. And the more you listen and sit with it and practice it and embody it, just the grander it becomes, and the healing, I don't say accelerates, but just the depth of the healing is it becomes more clear. So a little bit long-winded. So just
Oh,
yeah,
I love it.
the grind of the game just squeezed me out, and I'm just so grateful for all this on the other side of it, be able to speak to it.
Oh, I love it. And I have my own story and the mental health issues in hockey and all that. But were you both like me, where I exhausted every other option? I tried every SSRI, every other medication, every other therapy, every doctor, until finally I was like, all right, psychedelics, let's do this. I'm at the end of my rope. I got nothing left. Bush, I'll ask you first. Like, was it like that for you? Just exhaust everything else and then found a kind of a foray into psychedelic medicine?
Pretty much, it was what they gave us during the playing days, but then what we can get our hands on afterwards. For example, Adderall. I had some issues with focus and concentration, my doctor prescribed me that, and I didn't know much about synthetic drugs at the time, And just through diet in itself, if you just are more conscious on, Riley, you always say this, treat let medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine, and that is real. I mean, we can heal a lot of our own issues just by what we put into our own body, whole foods. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I went through, Hershey, and the cannabis and the psilocybin pathway has by far been the best for me so far. It just keeps me more grounded, I guess, and more conscious, and um, I don't know if you know this, but when I was in Thailand, the whole purpose was going to Thailand. It was to it brought me to yoga. Riley, I was following Riley way back in the day. I probably, I don't know, Riley, reached out to you, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago, it seems like. I think just when Twitter was starting in, and I really liked, he was being a big advocate. I wasn't good, I wasn't new, I was new, kind of new to social media at the time, and it seems like a generation below us, Hirsch. Riley, you got to be about what? I'm 53 now, so you got to be in
44.
44, yeah. So we're about a decade behind or so, and I was very admired how you talked, via social media with what you're experiencing. And then I reached out to him, and we had a lot of discussions, and we were on the same pathway. I just wasn't very vocal about it, and so I admire that about you, Riley, back there, and you're
Thank you.
educating a lot of people at the same time. So from then on, it's just like, we gotta, the cat's out of the bag. The one good thing that the Liberals did, they legalized cannabis back in 2018 in Canada. So that opened up the doors for a lot of research. And everything's got to be backed by science, right? So we can legally do that now here in Canada, and we can refine the medicine to everyone's different. We all have a different DNA makeup, and with the science now, we can kind of customize our own medicines and be open-minded to try different things.
Yeah, Riley, kind of the same
You know what?
backstory.
No,
Yeah.
you know what? Mine was completely different, and I guess I could say that having had a relationship with both cannabis and psilocybin before I'd retired, even though it was misunderstood, I think the experience of it, I always in the back of my mind, I was like, this is, cannabis. It's not the devil's lettuce. This is not what they're telling us it is. Even like, with psilocybin, I didn't have the language to really describe the experiences back then. But it was always so positive and so bright and like so powerful, but I just didn't like really understand it. It was still, deemed as like, bad, and, the church and school and everything, right? The establishment itself. Um, However, so and I grew up in a little, I was a little bit of an outlaw, and I still am. I grew up around, bikers and the whole bit. So I think I had that in me. But I also, as I mentioned that book before, Hemp for Health, I understood the depth of prohibition and the politics in it. So at that time, I kind of like lost a lot of faith in the medical system. So the last thing I wanted when I retired was a diagnosis. I seen these guys, get dragged through the mud, every opinion under the sun, and they're confused and they don't know which way is up, and then eventually they just get gobbled up in whatever substance it is, and the rest is history. So I didn't want to be that. Again, I was leaning into, I guess you could say, faith, but just like knowing what I knew around my experiences and just leaning into something much greater than myself, which, in this case, I say Mother Earth, or, a source or whatever it was. So I was just like, if I had lost faith in the system, which was fully tainted by, pseudoscience, I would say, especially around cannabis, cannabis specifically, then you can go down the list of other drugs too. But, here we are in the psychedelics and Renaissance, right? And it's the same game. But, but I guess I just like recognize that, or at least had like a surface level understanding of the bureaucracy in it. So I just said, guess what? Like, I'm just going to lean into what I believe is better, and we'll see, and that's kind of how I approached it. And as Bushy mentioned, there was obviously paired with, nutritional healing and other stuff, but it was very well thought out at the time, the best I could, with the relationship that I had with both cannabis and psilocybin. And it was just, and it was just kind of like now reading more about it and understanding I say the science that was out there at the time, but it was just really leaning into more my heart and my feeling than anything else. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I think I don't want to say accelerated again, but I think it just helped me break through the noise without anybody or anything slowing me down, and just kind of doing my own thing. And I kind of been doing it ever since. But since then, now I've like, found different teachers to help support me on my path, different mentors. But at the time, like, I was in a situation where there was no one to talk to. Like, who am I going to talk to? You know what I mean? It's like, give me your advice. Like, should I see a medical professional and get real help, or should you do it on your own? Most people would talk you out of it. You know what I mean? So I just, I guess I just lean on what I knew at the time, the best I could, and just kind of followed, I guess, my intuition. So a little bit, say a little bit, certainly unconventional, but my relationship with both of these things is completely different than when I first really engaged with them on a, in a really true sense, with intention and mindfulness. So,
What was
um,
Ryan? I share the same sentiment to Riley that you do. That just by like I've watched your stuff, and you and I have journeyed together, and just thank you for being the voice, because it sure helped me and get me out there. But Riley, I want to ask you too as well. What was the first? You said that you use psychedelics and that recreationally. But what was the first time you really realized you're like, wow, this is healing. Like this can help me heal my wounds.
it was right after I made the decision to retire from playing in the NHL. I was 28 years old. I remember I was in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I'm from, and Paul Holmgren called me up, and it was like this idea that this job opening opened up in the minor leagues for coaching. But it was also in that moment where I was like, this is an exit. This is an exit stage left, and just take this opportunity. So it was right thereafter when I got back to Philly. It's kind of like, he's like, you could call it crazy or what, like following like the 5 grams of mushrooms in darkness and silence. It was literally like one of those, like, so now, even though it sounds like, just like random, it was very well thought out from the stuff that I like, experienced and what I had read. Not that I would, sit here and recommend that to anybody out there, but like, that's what I did. But like, that was the moment. It was just like, kind of like, like a lot of these, like, shedding of the old Riley. It was almost like, okay, like, that's not you, like, let that go. And it was just like this, like, real, just super powerful experience. You know what I mean? Because once you sit in silence, and this is why meditation is so powerful, and I never understood this before. Once you like eliminate the noise, you can hear, there's listening, this deep listening happens, right? And that was like the moment. Is like, wow, I'm actually like understanding so much in such a small amount of time, because I was listening and I was sitting in stillness and removing all the distractions that I was really good at, engaging with. So I think that moment was like the moment. And I want to say, like, I was obviously dealing with, really TBI, concussion related issues, substance abuse issues, and they're all interconnected, right, on some level. So it's hard to say, like, once I came out of the experience, like, I'm not going to say, like, I'm healed, I'm going to stand on the top of the mountain and shout, but like, I felt like incredible, because I think it was just like this idea of like letting like this old guy go, like this person who I thought I was, right? I mean, Bush, like, you embodied the role the best of them. I mean, you were, an undersized guy fighting all the, the big ass dudes, but like, you own that role, and it becomes you. You think you're that, if embodying being a hockey player is enough, like, you're embodying being a hockey fighter. It's like in a different dimension. So you have, like, that's why I see some of these guys struggle, is because their heart is still like attached to their role and their identity, right? And they struggle. And you see this with military veterans too, right? They put their heart and soul into something, and then it's hard to like separate the identity from the spirit. So it was just it was just such an important part of my life to be able to have that moment, to just like, again, the universe reminding you that everything's okay, that this is like next chapter, Riley, like, move on and own it, and just like embrace it. And the other thing I'll say, like, right out of the gate, was like, I understood almost in the moment too what being of service meant. You always hear it, you think you're doing a lot in the community, a lot of it's coming from probably a place of ego. You're just like doing it because like you're supposed to, but like being of service now, it's like, okay, well, now take what you've learned and I'll go like apply it, and be of
Yeah.
service, figure out what that means to you. And, that's kind of been like my last 16 years is figuring out how can I be of service the most? And how can I bring my energy into different spaces with different populations and make the most impact? I think that's what I'm still trying to figure out, honestly.
Amazing. I love it. Ryan, I'll ask you the same question. When was that first kind of aha or your first experience where things just kind of shifted for you?
To be honest with you, I was watching a documentary, the marijuana, the business, that's called The Union, the business behind marijuana, and it just got my eyes open. I was just started getting into the cannabis space there back in 2009, 10, and just the history of the plant. It was an aha moment where I was like, why did this plant ever get put on as a Schedule One? And why isn't there more research on this plant? And it's just kind of open, and it made me do a deeper dive into it and learn as much as I could about it. And it kind of opened my eyes that we have to be our own advocate. We want to take care of ourselves. Yeah, I mean, if I have a broken leg or arm, I'm going to go to the hospital. But I mean, we can't really depend on, doctors to diagnose our health issues when it comes to just a DIN number where they just want to give you a pill. And I'm not saying all doctors are like that because we need them, but we have to be our own advocates. So that was just an aha moment, a learning moment that I had way back in the day. And then with regards to my experience with psilocybin, well, Riley got me down to Colorado back in I don't even know when that was, Riley, I think it was 2018. I wouldn't say that was an aha moment, but that was just, it was opening my eyes to, this is going to be more mainstream getting out there. And then I just kind of, I think my real aha experience was I went to Arizona to do an ayahuasca experience, and my experience that I had there was, it was well, initially I felt like a molecule in the cosmos, where I went in there with an intention of healing, and I came out of that after that experience so much lighter and so much clearer and focused. And you don't want to shout at the top of the mountains like Riley says, but I felt like I could. I just felt so much energy, and again, it just made me do a deeper dive into that type of medicine, and I think it's very valuable for a lot of people, and hopefully one day we can make it more easily accessible to the people that need it or want to try it. It's not a fix-all, it's not a cure-all. I mean, you have to have intention, you have to, want to heal yourself, through just nutrition as well. But that's a good aid to kind of help expedite things along a little bit ways, I find anyways.
Yeah. Pam, I'd love to have you jump in and get your thoughts. We've got two former professional hockey players that put their bodies through the ringer with their job for their team, for their teammates, and seem to have obviously found help and healing through psychedelics and meditation and yoga. And I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, my heart sings like when I hear you guys talking about how you found that path. It's phenomenal. I mean, this is the path from surviving to thriving. And to give some context, when the war on drugs started, criminologist Neil Boyd at SFU wrote a brilliant book. It's called High Times in Canada, and he basically went through why every single drug that's illegal is illegal. And
Hmm.
essentially, we know this way more clearly now. It was for social control, it was for political control. The best way to control people is to control the drugs they like to use. That's why alcohol is legal. That's why tobacco is legal. And we know those are at the top of the harms to society. So
Right.
when we look at this, we know why it happened. And as a physician, I'm actually pretty pissed that these medicines were taken away from us. And I had the fortunate benefit of my first degree actually being criminology. So I understood that coming into medicine, that we were in a war on drugs and it was illegitimate. And there's no stopping this process now because people like both of you have gone through your healing process. You figured it out without much help from us in the medical community. And that is the tipping point is coming, I think, for that. I don't know any physicians or nurses anymore that haven't had their own psychedelic journey. So to me, that's incredibly optimistic. That's a huge tipping point that has come. And so much of what you said, I just want to go back into some of the science that I think is really important. Like we work with so many folks like hockey players, football players, MMA fighters. Everyone's taking these hits to the head, downhill skiers, snowboarders. And that degeneration that happens is we were kind of fed the thing, you just have to take it, right? It's not, there's no way to reverse it. There's no way to regain brain health. And we see these in these functional MRIs and scans. We see the brain shrinking after concussions. We see neurotransmitters dropping like dopamine and serotonin, our neurotransmitters that we need back, which then logically, as you guys have seen in your career, then leads to, ADD. You know how much ADD exists, but people didn't have it as a kid, but then they have it after they finish sport. So that's not really ADD. Something's changed structurally in the brain. Depression, anxiety, OCD, through the obsessional is so common in hockey players. And then that's a logical, like you both of you said, like substance use, alcohol use, which are sanctioned really by society. And it's all completely logical. And then you have a session with psilocybin and you suddenly realize this is healable. This is fixable. You reverse the neural inflammation. You increase your dopamine. You increase your serotonin. You increase your oxytocin. And the words you guys are using, like that connectedness, being in service, like that's ubiquitous. We all experience that from that change. And what you said with the science, which I love about being a scientist, is that we're realizing that when you take away that neural inflammation, not only do you heal what we call the mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, substance use, OCD, that heals, but then we thrive. And we move into all these creative endeavors and all these, service to humanity, which is a logical place. But my curiosity here, though, like you guys get it. Like Riley, you're in your 40s. Ryan, you're in your 50s. Corey, I think you're
27.
You're 20. So, but like, what about, like, I think about my dad. Like my dad's in his 70s. He's an alumni. Like, what about the 60-year-olds and the 70-year-olds? Like they're still like embedded in alcohol as king.
Yep.
Yeah. Riley, that's interesting to say that. Sorry to jump in, but Riley I won't mention any names, but it has worked with or tried to get some of those older generational players to work with yourself. And I don't know if you want to speak about that, Riley. And like I said, I'm not going to mention any names, of course. We're not going to, but you've done some great work in that realm, trying to get a lot of those guys to work on their healing.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, I mean, that older generation is still locked into the booze. I mean, say Flyers organization specifically. I mean, half the alumni are recovering alcoholics, and they're looking for some sort of bridge, I guess you could say, right? Because like, unless you're like a Buddhist monk of some sort, like the AA program's not easy. It's like staying sober is not easy. So like having some sort of, say, exit drug, I think is why cannabis is an amazing version of that. But even also, microdosing psilocybin. So between micro and macro, I mean, I've helped, some of these alumni guys say get off the booze or help, just minimize it, different perspective. Because again, like the AA programs themselves are like, all or nothing. It's like, it's all bad. And, the cannabis is heroin, and heroin is, alcohol, and alcohol is, pick your drug. But we know that's not true. So I think even a couple of the alumni with the Flyers, I'll mention Todd Fedoruk specifically. Like he has a more advanced view on substance abuse recovery. Like he's gone through the program. He's been sober how many years? Except for he now sees the potential use for cannabis and or psilocybin for people in recovery, obviously with intention, and there has to be some sort of real mindfulness around it. But things are changing. I think a lot of these older generational thinkers are slowly but surely maybe observing what's going on. I think cannabis prohibition still exists, but state by state, things are becoming more socially acceptable. So they're kind of like being more curious. And I think the conversation around psilocybin, unless you're living under a rock, like you had to have seen some sort of, media coverage on psilocybin, say specifically, but psychedelics in general, that is maybe helped you get a little more curious too. So we're seeing a shift, right? Consciousness is interesting how it evolves, and it takes younger generations to help maybe shift that for older generations, and seeing what's working, what's not working. But I think what I've observed is that whether you understand this at all or not, it's something better than what you're currently dealing with and what you're using, right? So I think what I find now is people just like always asking me questions, like they're just like they're so curious. So it's really interesting. I guess when you see somebody kind of do it, you want to learn, right? And everyone's got the same issues we deal with, right? Everyone's got some level of pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, dealing with the mental health crisis, and the spiritual nature of this existence, right? Everyone's got the same type of things within that experience. And pain and suffering is part of it, but no one wants to be sitting in that pain and suffering, not for very long, if we can avoid it, right? Or if we can eliminate it or minimize it. So if there's a better way, everyone's kind of open to that idea. Just a lot of people just don't know where to look for this type of information, because it's kind of the establishment versus whatever you see the underground looking like. It's kind of like, you got to be really good with discernment when you start taking information. I think this is why it's so hard for a lot of people to change and take that leap, is because there's so much information. Say there's real information and there's disinformation and misinformation, and people just get lost in it, So I think as long as we're keeping it simple and keep spitting out, the information, the education, the experiences, eventually people will take that step and lean into it. Because they're not going to sit around and suffer much longer. It's like one of those things. You get squeezed hard enough, eventually you're gonna do something and take that step.
Yeah, that's a lot of good points there, Riley. When Bushy probably the same is that I'm a player from the 90s, and it was if someone was smoking weed or you found out they did mushrooms on the weekend, you'd be trying to get them kicked off the team, right?
Right.
Yeah, we were drinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like we were, and it's so, and I look back and I go, I was wrong. Like I was one of those, and but Riley, you brought up another point. So I've talked to people about psychedelics and healing and all that, and they are in a program or whatever, and it might be working for them, and that's great. But they've asked me about psychedelics and having former substance issues. They're worried about taking psilocybin or doing therapy with. So I'll ask you that, Pam. Like, when someone with a former substance issue, they're worried they're going to get addicted again. That it's something, and just maybe you can to add to that.
Yeah, I love this. That's one thing that in the Roots to Thrive nonprofit that I'm the medical lead of, we see it all the time. Like substance use is so common in society, but substance use isn't the challenge. Like, right, that's not the issue. The issue is the trauma. Substance use is logical. You're trying to all feel better, whether it's going for a run, whether it's sex, whether it's coffee, alcohol, smoking a joint, or using Percocet. We're just trying to feel better. So it's logical to ignore the symptoms and really focus on the trauma. Like, what is yearning to be heard, fixed, seen, resolved? And when in our programming, when those traumas start to heal, the substance use disappears. When the neuroinflammation starts to go down from using psychedelic medicines, we actually see physical pain dropping, because inflammation is inflammation, whether it's in the brain or in the body, it's attached. So when these psychedelics bring down the inflammation, or cannabis bring down inflammation, the whole body starts to feel better. We also know that the body stores emotions. So if you have a lot of anger or shame or guilt, you can store that in your body. And we know from data that many men store anger in their lower back. They resolve the anger, lower back pain goes away. Many women, neck tension, headaches, middle of the back in the rhomboid area, pain, you drop their stress, pain goes away. So the mind and body are connected. right? So that's what we're seeing with the using any of the psychedelic medicines is there's a level of neuroinflammation that drops and the trauma drops. So the substance use goes away. You're not needing as much Percocet if you're not inflamed and your body's feeling well and you're running more and you're eating better. So the psychedelics can also be the doorway to better lifestyle, to moving to the yoga mat, to moving to the meditation, to getting out in the trees and playing with your kids more. And the data just keeps showing that, like, nature relatedness goes up after a psychedelic journey. Joy goes up after a psychedelic journey. And on the recovery side, the 12 steps are kudos like to that, but we all know Bill Wilson developed that out of an LSD trip now.
Right.
We all know that. Let's just say it. And there's a whole group of people out there, and it's called Psychedelics in Recovery. People that have been in 12-step programs and have found psychedelics to be helpful, and they're trying to bridge it because abstinence is a huge part of 12-step programs. Yet psychedelics is also a huge step of recovery. So thus there is this group out there called Psychedelics in Recovery, and many communities, many cities have these for people that kind of want to follow the 12-step, but also want to have a psychedelic session to move through the trauma. So I think we're in a really interesting time, and I'm super optimistic because everything's moving forward because people are telling their stories.
Yeah.
Well, good points there, Pam. My brother, who's been struggling with substance abuse and alcoholism for pretty much his entire life, and has been in and out of rehab programs for at least the last decade. I've done some psychedelic ceremonies with them where we did some macrodosing, and he was blown away of how he felt. Of course, it's not a fix-all, but you have to continually he was able to look at a lot of his own issues from a different perspective, and then he started microdosing for a little bit here and there, and I asked him, I said, when you microdose or you maybe take a little extra or whatever, is it a gateway to alcohol? Does it make you want to drink? And he was very absolutely not at all. So I'm just watching that firsthand, and it's quite a nice experience. And well, also he's going to AA currently, and he doesn't care that I'm sharing this, so he told me I can. And their policy now is, I think Riley, you said, yeah, is hard. Like, yeah, you're stopping alcohol, you can't do nothing at all. But now they're allowing a little bit of microdosing and maybe some cannabis to kind of ease off, because they realize now that marijuana or cannabis and psychedelics is not a gateway to harder drugs or back to alcohol. It's just not. It's a healing modality that just needs to get out there.
Right.
For sure.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that because that's important. But the stories are important to hear. And I know I had some alcohol issues too. And I mean, I rarely drink, if at all, anymore, after healing a lot of my stuff through psychedelics and Riley, this, I know a lot of your story and very similar, like just healing yourself. And you've done so much work though. And it's such a great conversation. But Riley, I do want to ask you about your drumming. You go to youth groups, you do some amazing things with drumming work. And I wanted to make sure that give you an opportunity to talk about that because there's so many different ways to heal, and your drumming circles and how you're helping kids is incredible.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I was introduced to the drum like in a say a formal matter down in Jamaica, doing a lot of psilocybin work down there and just connecting to the drum. Spent some time in the indigenous Rastafarian village, but what I what I learned is like the drum is another vehicle for expanding consciousness, altered states of consciousness, depending on how you use it, obviously, whether it's shamanic drumming or drum therapy where it's 7-8 beats per second type of stuff where it's not a predictable rhythm, but the brain is trying to sort itself out. But much like the psilocybin specifically, I don't know have the language for it, but it's helping to reconnect the brain. It's connection, on so many different levels. It's connection to the moment, right? You're present. It's connection to the drum itself, just connection to self. And if you're in a group, there's a connection to others, nonverbal communication. But I think as you practice it more, I mean, if you talk about just like introducing it to, youth hockey players, it's just a fun, engaging way to teach presence, to teach, to do a team building exercise, listening, right? Deep listening, all that good stuff. But if you go even deeper with it, I mean, much like what we're using, psilocybin for, I think the drum. I know the drum could be a vehicle for similar outcomes. Obviously, one requires, well, depending on how we approach it, either listening or participating in the drumming, with or without plant medicine. But I mean, I think equally as profound as using a certain level of dose of, say, psilocybin. So they could be paired. Obviously, with the work I'm doing with kids is certainly on its own, but without saying some of these more spiritual words, it's just like focus, concentrate, right? Nervous system regulation, stress, right? The words that people, the kids can understand. And if you bring in the words of performance, flow state, and these sexier words. Oh, we got a little feedback there.
You're on dual screen. You got to shut one off. There you go. Never leave hockey players in charge of electronics.
See, three of you there.
Sorry, Ralph.
No, you're all good. You're all good.
Riley, fire away.
Yeah, no. So it's for my own personal healing and a practice to complement meditation, I guess if you want to call it that, more of a meditative practice, but also like another tool in the toolbox to bring into, say, the community. Like the drums and hockey seem like, like polar opposite sides of the spectrum. I'm bringing drums into the hockey rink, and we're like, hey, we're going to have a little powwow here. We're going to learn, right? So it's a simple way to introduce some of these, say, more profound ideas without having to go that deep. You don't have to say a whole lot. It's always about feeling, right? I mean, as soon as you put the drum in the hand, they start finding the rhythm, the brain entrainment, the whole bit. It's pretty incredible what you can witness and what they can feel. Because at the end of it, it's like, well, how do you feel? Well, I feel energized. I feel relaxed. You know what I mean? It's all these, very powerful, I say, feelings and emotions that these kids are being able to communicate. And then there's just like taking that idea and applying it to, in this case, hockey, right? It's like, well, at the end of the day, we're teaching these guys how to be hockey players, and we're teaching them the game. But outside of hockey, life is hairy, right? The stress is inevitable. So how are we going to manage the stress when the game gets hard or life gets hard? How are we going to be able to self-regulate? Can we tap? Can we tune into the heartbeat? Can we be grateful? Can we just, take a second to reflect? And I just use the drum as yes, it's a physical vehicle, but remove the drum and just tap into rhythm, like, no pun intended, like just find, it could be an easy access point. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with these kids. And it's really no different for adults, because really it's complicated, but it's simple, right? It just requires discipline and a little bit of presence. And with that formula, really anything is possible. But I think it's just most people aren't that disciplined. They're so distracted, and they want the easy button. They want the easy fix. And I think this is why people reach for the booze or reach for the pill. They just think it's going to magically cure them. But as we know, we have to have some skin in the game, and we have to put our heart into it. So the drum has been an amazing vehicle to teach.
I love it. I love that. I love that you're giving youth that option, right? Those are things that we never had as kids, right? It was hockey or bust. And the one thing I do want to, we're running out a little bit of time here, but I do want Pam. All three of us have obviously had concussion issues through hockey, and there's healing with psychedelics, and everybody seems to say that they've got the fix for this or that, like hyperbaric chambers. There's so many options out there. And I don't want to dismiss any of those other options, but I just want to get your thoughts on psychedelics and concussions and how they help heal through that.
Yeah, and I like how you preface it. There's a lot of recipes to get people well. And that's, I think, the main thing to know, that there's multiple ways of getting to the point. And many of my mentors have taught that. But with psychedelics specifically, with those brain injuries, it can be a high dose of psilocybin in a therapeutic range can be the first step to that healing, to drop that neural inflammation. And then what we're seeing with a lot of folks that are curing their concussions, I mean, a lot of other things, like let me just back up, like you need structural integrity, like you need to be in alignment. Your fascia needs to be moving. Your CSF needs to be pumping. It's a circulatory system, just like our blood in our system, just like our lymphatics. We also need our CSF to be pumping. So we do need like structural physical alignment so that our brain is actually getting the nourishment it needs. We also need really good sleep, which is hard when you have a concussion, but you need good sleep because now we know how the brain cleans itself at night, how it opens up the pores and the microglial cells come in and clean out debris. So we also need that. And then psychedelics is also on the buffet table of choices. So a good dose of psilocybin, a good dose of ayahuasca, wachuma, like there are so many healing plants and fungi and man-made medicines too, MDMA, ketamine, that can do this. They all work in different ways, slightly, but they all have this neural anti-inflammatory effect. And as you all know, and when you're under a psychedelic journey, parts of your brain that don't normally talk are now talking, which is why you get this, like, you can taste, the color green. You can see your ancestors. You can talk to your descendants. You can have the big aha moments, right? So when all those parts are talking, you're also making new dendritic spikes, which means you're going to over time create new pathways, right? And so any of the pathways that have atrophied from concussions, now you can start making collateral workarounds in the brain, which means you can expand your brain. So the macro starts it, but then the microdose is so powerful. Whatever the interval that works for people, whatever the dose combination. I'm a huge fan of psilocybin mushrooms with lion's mane mycelium with niacin following the Stamets stack. I mean, there's just so many thousands and thousands of case reports showing like neuroregeneration, like changing the inflammation. And then doing that microdosing over time at intervals that work for you. So I have folks that they take it at bedtime. They're really trying to harness that brain repair time. And other people that do it during the day. I know I have a lot of elite athletes that use it to actually accentuate their skill set, their ability to stick handle faster, their ability to go over hurdles faster. So I think we're really in the infancy, but of really individualized medicine here. So macro followed by micro, we figure it out on the individual level.
Pam, can I ask you a question?
I was going to say, Bushy, if you have a question, please. You were getting a little feedback on your mic, but just ask the question, then mute, and then we'll get the answer.
Roger that. Yeah. When it comes to macro dosing, from the research that how often should one be macro dosing, say, for your average, like for someone like me, for example, or anybody? Is it generalized?
No, I love this question. And I think this is really where we're all trying to return to our inner healer and our own inner intelligence. Everyone's different. And I think when you've really prepared, like any good journey, you've had a good journey, and then you're integrating. And for some folks, that integration could take a year to really integrate the lessons. For others, they'll integrate it much quicker in a month, even 2 weeks. We've had some people that are like, I got it. I got the lesson. I'm ready to hear more. I'm ready for my next lesson. And some people it's longer. So I think it's really about returning to our inner knowledge, our own intuition, which you all have. Any elite athlete has intuition. And then going, when am I actually ready? And usually the doors all open right away. Like if you're thinking ayahuasca, suddenly, the plane tickets are on sale. It's easy to get there. Like all the doors align and you head to Colombia and you have an ayahuasca session. And I think these like, this is my own personal opinion, but I think medicines like the plants like wachuma and ayahuasca and the fungi like psilocybin, I think they're their own sentient beings and they call us when they're ready for us. And when we go too quickly, so people that really do these psychedelic passports are just doing something every weekend, they get smacked down pretty hard by the medicines when they're like, you weren't invited yet. So I know that's kind of weird for a doctor to talk that way, but I've been working with these medicines long enough to go, sometimes a medicine says, I didn't call you. What are you doing here?
Yeah, been there, done that. Riley, do you have any questions for Pam while you have her here, or if anything you want to ask? Pam is the expert, so if not, we can wrap things up here as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I probably have a lot of different questions because obviously the depth of these medicines is so profound. I guess maybe just share from like the simplest way you could describe like the way, let's just say psilocybin, but the way these earth medicines help us reconnect back to our highest self, back to nature. You mentioned like, people coming to these medicines have a new appreciation for nature, but like what I found is just, I guess consciousness is connection. It's just like there's just constantly like more levels of connection, and again to the self, more love for our meat suit and others and nature, and this like maybe just talk to um, why that's so important for the human experience, because I think that's like to me like the spiritual disconnection is kind of the crisis we're really in, but like how these medicines help us connect back to source.
Thank you. And Corey, I just got to correct. I'm not an expert. I'm just a human
you're
on this journey. And all I know is the older I get and the more I learn, the less I actually know.
Yeah, right.
I'm very humbled by these medicines, and I have much, much to learn and I hope in the next 50 years on this ball spinning through space, I learn a little bit more. But I think to your question, and I think we all have this sense in our bodies, is that these medicines help us unlayer stuff that's not ours. It helps us get rid of these stories, like many of us achieve because we have these stories from childhood. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. When you get that new goal, then you'll be worthy. Then you'll be worthy of love. And there's a lot of people that really drive for these things without really realizing you were always good enough. You were born worthy. You are worthy of love. You are on this planet for a good reason. Have fun, have joy, be in community, have connection. And we get this stuff layered on because we have this error in our thinking that we're separate from nature when we are not. We are part of nature. We are part of Earth, and we have separated that only recently, actually only in the last 200-300 years. It's a very recent separation. If we go back not too many generations to our ancestors and to where our families were from, we had ritual, we had ceremony. Riley, you're talking about drumming, rites of passage that calmed our parasympathetic nerves, that bonded the community in love and care. And that's what these are doing. I think they're just simply removing the unneeded layers and returning us to who we really are, to love, to service, to community, to connection. And that's what they're doing. And they come with such love of us. Like they're so sweet to us. They teach us so beautifully. Sometimes we get a really hard smack from them to grow up, but they are always giving us lessons at a time critical. Like my partner Paul says, this is time critical on this planet, and we need to step up.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, well said, Pam. Thank you.
Mhm.
Before we wrap things up, Ryan, just tell us what we're doing, how people can find you. Give us a rundown of how life is going for you and where you're at these days.
So basically, I sell real estate. That's my real job, but my passion is cannabinoid therapy and working with psilocybin. And that's kind of where I'm at. I was coaching hockey for the last, well, probably since the age of 23, so I'm 53 now. So this is my second year of not being involved in hockey during the winter months, so I can spend more time on myself, trying to understand these medicines a little bit more deeply and share what I know.
Beautiful. Riley?
A little bit of a serial entrepreneur, but all in the world of mindfulness. I teach mindfulness, obviously, yoga, meditation, rhythmic drumming, and then psychedelic integration facilitating. So whether it's micro, macro, or just being, a voice for the integration, just again, embodying the practice on the pre and post, right? I mean, I think a lot of time we just focus on the back end of these psychedelic experience, but a lot to learn, a lot of prep work that could be focused on the front end. But it's just really getting the body and the mind primed, and it's all in the world of mindfulness. So with or without plant medicine, just teaching how just how to manage emotion and guide, cultivate life force, direct focus, and just kind of live your best life. So been grateful for this journey, and it just keeps getting better, honestly. So just to keep finding new, great people and new ideas. And I think this is another thing, just like really tapping into the creative nature of myself. Growing up being a hockey player and tough, blah blah blah. I realized, hey, like I've been a creative this whole time, and really kind of like owning that piece. So having fun on the co-creation side, and just keep learning, keep growing.
Any words of advice for someone that's looking into going in this direction and maybe hasn't dipped their want to dip their toe in the water, they're looking into it, but just don't know how to kind of take that next step?
Well, I think fear is always the variable that separates us from, well, whatever we're trying to accomplish, really, right? It's always fear, somebody or something talking us out of it. So I would just say, like, transcend the fear and just have a little courage and lean into Mother Nature, obviously with discretion and some mindfulness. But I mean, as Pam mentioned, like, I would say for the most part, gentle teachers, right? I mean, a lot of sometimes I'll have to slap you around if you're disrespecting, but if you approach it with, the right frame of mind and bring in the right energy, some amazing things can happen. So, you could say, well, go do the research and all this other stuff, but then the mind gets in the way and the fear bodies get in the way. I think there's enough information out there now, and certainly enough stories out there. It's just, you got to get out of your own way. Just like, take that leap, be safe, be mindful, but, you're tapping into source, right? I mean, she's highly intelligent, perfectly intelligent, right? And she seems to do what she does best, is just remind and help us remember. So I think it's just getting on your own way and face the fear, because fear is really, no matter what we're talking about, is getting in the way of our dreams, getting in the way of our healing, getting in the way of the things we want to do. It's always that. And and I think, on the other side of it, ironically, psilocybin, psychedelics help transcend fear. They help shed fear bodies, right? And to make us more courageous and, take on a leadership role. So it's like on the front end and the back end, it's like the fear, just eliminate the fear, and
Beautiful.
Explore.
Thank you. Ryan, any last words?
You hit the nail on the head, from coaching kids hockey and just kids in sports from a young age. There's a lot of kids and a lot of people, adults out there that are afraid to fail. And I always tell the kids, just go out there and do your best, and don't be afraid to fail, because that's what makes us stronger. And want to build your teammates up, and you want to help them along the way, and be a good teammate and be accountable, and learn from your mistakes and move on. And this type of medicine, I think, kind of opens up your mind to be able to explore more options, and not be so afraid to go out and, dip your toes in the water and kind of, and then sit back. Obviously, do everything with intention. Everything's got to be done with intention, and then and then integrating back into whatever life it is you want, and you can manifest whatever it is you want, and you can make that happen. So yeah, that's about all I got to say. And thank you for having us on here.
Yeah,
What about you,
thank
Corey?
you. Yeah.
What about you, Corey? Where do people find you, and what are your
Oh my
wise
goodness. Yeah.
wise
Well,
words?
right now I'm going to school with the becoming a psychedelic assisted therapist, going to counseling so that I can add that to that and work with people in medicine, and doing some work with Pam at Roots to Thrive. So it's been uh I'll just quickly say it. I felt like after the game I lost purpose for a long time. I would wake up and I'd go, well, okay, I guess I'll live today, because the other option isn't really an option. And through this journey of psychedelics and just healing and meeting people like yourselves through it, it's, we played against each other, but I didn't really know you guys until this, and I'm so thankful. I love you guys like brothers. You're so good to me. I can call you up anytime and we can chat about anything and everything. So yeah, the world of healing is hard, but the psychedelics that have brought us together, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful gift. and it's all a gift. So, like I said, I just want to thank you guys for being here. And Pam, if you have anything else you want to add, and we'll just wrap things up here.
I just want to say the psychedelic community is a kind community. It is
Mm-hmm.
really, if you really want to know where all the cool kids are hanging out, it's the psychedelic community. It's kind, loving, and collaborative. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, agreed.
Nice.
Love it. All right. Love you guys. Thank you so much. We'll
Love
wrap
you
it up,
guys.
and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.